Imagine changing healthcare forever with just a single drop of blood. No needles, no waiting rooms, no painful laboratory tests. Imagine diagnosing hundreds of diseases from a tiny finger prick in just a few minutes. Now imagine convincing some of the world's most powerful people that you've built that future. Former secretaries of state believed in it. Billionaire investors funded it. The media celebrated it. Silicon Valley called it revolutionary. At its peak, Theranos was valued at more than $9 billion. Its founder became the world's youngest self-made female billionaire. There was only one problem. The technology didn't work. This is the story of Theranos and Elizabeth Holmes, a story of extraordinary ambition, remarkable deception alleged by prosecutors, and one of Silicon Valley's most dramatic corporate collapses. Welcome to Corporate Kishan. Chapter 1. The Dream. The early 2000s were the golden age of Silicon Valley innovation. Companies like Google, Apple, and Facebook were transforming industries and changing the world. Investors were looking for the next revolutionary idea. In 2003, a 19-year-old Stanford University student named Elizabeth Holmes believed she had found one. She had an ambitious vision. What if hundreds of medical tests could be performed using just a few drops of blood? What if laboratory testing became faster, cheaper, and accessible to millions of people around the world? It was a compelling idea. Healthcare could become more affordable. Diseases could potentially be detected earlier. Millions of patients could benefit. Inspired by that vision, Holmes left Stanford University and founded Theranos. She wasn't selling a product. She was selling a possibility. And Silicon Valley loves people who promise to change the future. Investors began paying attention. The dream had officially begun. Chapter 2. The dream everyone believed. The idea sounded almost magical. What if a single drop of blood could replace dozens of painful blood tests? What if results that normally took days could be delivered in just a few minutes? That was the future Elizabeth Holmes promised. She claimed Theranos had developed revolutionary technology that could run hundreds of medical tests using only a tiny finger prick sample. If it worked, it would completely transform healthcare around the world. The vision was powerful. It promised faster diagnoses, lower costs, and easier access to life-saving medical information. It wasn't just another startup. It was presented as the future of medicine. Investors quickly took notice. Some of the world's wealthiest individuals and influential business leaders invested hundreds of millions of dollars into the company. Confidence in Theranos continued to grow, even though very few people had actually seen the technology work. Soon, the company reached an astonishing valuation of nearly $9 billion. Elizabeth Holmes herself became one of the youngest self-made female billionaires in the world, at least on paper. The media couldn't get enough of her. Magazine covers celebrated her as a visionary entrepreneur. Television interviews praised her ambition. Many even compared her to Steve Jobs because of her black turtleneck, confident presentations, and bold promises. To the outside world, Theranos looked unstoppable. It seemed like the company that would change medicine forever. But behind the polished presentations, glowing headlines, and billion-dollar reputation, a very different story was quietly unfolding. That story was about to change everything. Chapter 3. The First Cracks. But behind the billion-dollar headlines, not everyone was convinced. Inside Theranos, some employees had started noticing something deeply troubling. The revolutionary blood testing device wasn't producing reliable results. Tests were inconsistent, machines frequently failed, and many samples had to be secretly retested using traditional laboratory equipment. The problem wasn't just technical, it was becoming a matter of patient safety. Incorrect blood test results could lead to the wrong diagnosis, unnecessary treatment, or even a missed medical condition. Several employees raised concerns internally, hoping the problems would be fixed before the technology reached more patients. But according to later reports and testimony, instead of encouraging open discussion, the company maintained an unusually secretive culture. Teams reportedly worked in isolation, and information was tightly controlled. As pressure from investors and the media continued to grow, Theranos faced a difficult choice. Admit that the technology wasn't ready, or continue protecting the company's image. The warning signs were there, but from the outside, almost nobody could see them. The world still believed Theranos was changing medicine. In reality, the foundation of the company was beginning to crack. And soon, someone outside the company would start asking the questions that nobody else had dared to ask. Chapter 4. The Investigation. For years, Theranos had managed to protect its image. Investors were impressed. The media celebrated the company. Patients trusted the promise. But in 2015, that began to change. An investigative journalist named John Carreyrou from the Wall Street Journal started receiving tips from people who had worked inside Theranos. Former employees described a company where the technology often failed, test results were unreliable, and concerns were ignored. At first, these claims were difficult to verify. Theranos strongly denied the allegations and defended its technology. The company's leadership also responded aggressively. According to public reports, lawyers contacted former employees, confidentiality agreements were enforced, and significant pressure was placed on people who spoke out. Despite these obstacles, Carreyrou continued investigating. He interviewed former staff, reviewed documents, and spent months verifying every claim. Then, on October 15, 2015, the Wall Street Journal published an article that shook Silicon Valley. The report alleged that Theranos had been using conventional laboratory equipment for many of its blood tests while presenting its own technology as revolutionary. The article raised serious questions about whether the company's public claims matched reality. For the first time, the world began to question Theranos. The company that had promised to revolutionize healthcare was now facing intense public scrutiny. And this was only the beginning. Chapter 5. The Collapse. The Wall Street Journal investigation was only the beginning. As more information came to light, regulators and healthcare authorities began examining Theranos more closely. Questions that had once been ignored could no longer be avoided. According to public findings, inspections uncovered serious problems with the company's laboratory operations. Confidence in Theranos started to disappear. One by one, business partners began distancing themselves from the company. The image of a revolutionary startup was quickly replaced by growing public skepticism. Patients who had trusted the company's promises began wondering whether their test results had been accurate. Investors who had celebrated Theranos as the future of healthcare watched the company's value collapse. The billions of dollars that had once existed on paper rapidly disappeared. Employees left. Partnerships ended. The company's reputation was shattered. In 2018, Theranos officially dissolved. The startup that once promised to change medicine forever had become one of the biggest corporate failures in Silicon Valley history. But the company's story was still not over. The most difficult chapter was yet to come. Chapter 6. The trial. After years of investigations, public scrutiny, and legal proceedings, the Theranos story reached the courtroom. Federal prosecutors accused Elizabeth Holmes of misleading investors about the company's technology and business performance. Holmes denied intentionally deceiving anyone, and her legal team argued that she believed in the company's mission and never intended to commit fraud. The trial attracted worldwide attention. Former employees, investors, and industry experts testified over several months, giving the court a detailed picture of how Theranos operated. In January 2022, a jury found Holmes guilty on multiple counts related to defrauding investors, while acquitting her on some other charges. The mixed verdict reflected the complexity of the case. Later, she was sentenced to more than 11 years in federal prison. She appealed the conviction, but the case had already become a defining moment in startup history. The rise of Theranos had inspired millions. Its fall became a warning to entrepreneurs, investors, and the business world. Chapter 7. The Legacy of Theranos. The fall of Theranos wasn't just the story of one company. It became a warning for the entire startup world. Innovation is powerful. Ambition is necessary. But when promises move faster than proof, trust can disappear overnight. The Theranos story reminded investors to ask difficult questions instead of simply believing bold claims. It reminded business leaders that transparency is not a weakness. It's the foundation of long-term success. And it reminded all of us that technology should never replace evidence, especially when people's health is involved. Today, Theranos no longer exists, but its story continues to be taught in business schools, discussed in boardrooms, and studied by entrepreneurs around the world. Because success is not measured by headlines or billion-dollar valuations. Success is measured by trust. And once trust is broken, can take a lifetime to rebuild. This wasn't just the rise and fall of Theranos. It was a lesson about leadership, responsibility, and the price of broken promises. If you enjoy documentaries that uncover the stories behind the world's biggest companies, consider subscribing to Corporate Kishan. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next documentary.